The man in the corner. I never imagined that the innocence of childhood could be shattered by something so sinister. It all began with my son's incessant questions about the man in the corner of his room, a figure that existed only in the depths of his imagination, or so I thought. But as the days passed and his fear grew more palpable, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something lurking in the shadows, something that defied explanation. Every night, as I tucked him into bed, he would turn to me with wide eyes, filled with a terror that sent shivers down my spine. "Why won't he stop staring at me, Daddy?" he would whisper, his voice trembling with fear. "He's always there, watching me." I tried to reassure him, to convince him that there was nothing to be afraid of, that the man in the corner was nothing more than a figment of his imagination. But each night, as I kissed him goodnight and turned off the light, I could feel the weight of his fear pressing down on me. Desperate for answers, I began to investigate the source of my son's terror, scouring his room for any sign of the mysterious figure that haunted his dreams. But no matter how hard I searched, there was no trace of the man in the corner, no evidence to support my son's claims. As the days turned into weeks, I watched helplessly as my son's fear consumed him, transforming him from a happy, carefree child into a shell of his former self. He grew pale and thin, his once bright eyes dull with exhaustion, haunted by the specter of the man who refused to leave him in peace. And then, one fateful night, as I sat beside my son's bed, trying in vain to comfort him as he tossed and turned in the grip of a nightmare, I saw something that chilled me to the bone, a shadowy figure lurking in the corner of the room, its eyes gleaming with malevolent intent. As I stared into the darkness, my heart pounding in my chest, I could feel the chill of the unknown creeping into my bones. The figure in the corner seemed to pulse with a sinister energy, its presence filling the room with a suffocating sense of dread. I reached out to switch on the light, desperate to banish the shadows and reveal the truth behind the nightmare that had taken hold of our lives. But as the light flooded the room, the figure vanished into thin air, leaving behind nothing but the echo of my son's terrified screams. I tried to rationalize away what I had seen, to convince myself that it was nothing more than a trick of the light or a product of my own overactive imagination. But deep down, I knew that the darkness that had claimed my son's room was far more sinister than I could have ever imagined. As the days passed, the haunting intensified, the figure in the corner growing more aggressive with each passing night. My son's cries filled the house, echoing through the halls like a ghostly lament, a reminder of the terror that lurked just beyond the threshold of our reality. And then, one night, as I stood alone in my son's room, watching helplessly as he slept fitfully in his bed, I felt a presence behind me, a chill creeping up my spine that told me I was no longer alone. With a sense of dread that threatened to consume me, I turned slowly, expecting to come face to face with the figure that had haunted our dreams for so long. But there was nothing there, save for the empty darkness of the room behind me. But as the room flooded with light, I saw something that filled me with a terror unlike anything I had ever known. Reflected in the mirror on the wall was the figure of a man, a dark, twisted version of myself, with eyes filled with malevolent intent. I stumbled backwards, my heart pounding in my chest, as the realization washed over me. The figure in the corner was not a ghost or a specter from beyond the grave, it was me, or rather, a manifestation of my own darkest fears and desires. For years, I had buried my guilt and shame deep within my subconscious, hiding from the truth of my actions and the consequences they had wrought. But now, faced with the horrifying reality of what I had become, I could no longer deny the darkness that lurked within me. I confronted the figure in the mirror, my voice trembling with fear and anger. "Who are you and what do you want from us?" I demanded, my words echoing through the empty room. But the figure only laughed. "I am you," it whispered, its voice filled with malice. "I am the darkness that lurks within your soul, the sins that you have tried so hard to forget. And until you confront the truth of who you are, none of you are safe." I reached out and seized the mirror, shattering it into a million pieces. And as the shards fell to the ground, reflecting the fractured image of my own shattered psyche, I knew that the nightmare was far from over, that the darkness that had taken hold of our lives would haunt us for all eternity. The shards of the broken mirror lay scattered on the floor, a reflection of the shattered reality that had once been my life. As I stood amidst the ruins of my own making, I knew that there would be no easy answers, no quick fixes to the darkness that had taken hold of my soul. Story 2. Echoes of Tomorrow. The house stood like a sentinel against the encroaching darkness, its silhouette looming ominously against the twilight sky. As I stepped through the creaking doorway, a chill ran down my spine, sending shivers cascading through my body. My grandmother had left me this old Victorian mansion in her will, a place I hadn't visited since childhood. But now, with her passing, it felt like a weighty inheritance, laden with secrets waiting to be unearthed. The air was heavy with the scent of dust and neglect as I navigated the dimly lit corridors, the floorboards groaning underfoot. Every corner seemed to harbor shadows, whispering secrets long forgotten. As I ascended the staircase to the attic, a sense of trepidation gnawed at the edges of my consciousness, urging me to turn back. But curiosity held me in its grasp, pulling me ever closer to the unknown. At last, I reached the attic, the space bathed in the soft glow of moonlight filtering through grimy windows. Amongst the forgotten relics of years gone by, I spotted an old trunk tucked away in the corner, covered in cobwebs and neglect. With trembling hands, I pried it open, revealing a treasure trove of forgotten memories. Nestled amidst moth-eaten clothes and yellowed photographs, I found a weathered journal, its pages brittle with age. As I flipped through its contents, a sense of unease settled over me. The entries were written in my own handwriting, detailing mundane occurrences with eerie precision. But what chilled me to the bone was the final entry, dated for tomorrow, foretelling events that had yet to pass. A cold sweat broke out across my brow as I grappled with the implications of my discovery. How could I have written about events that hadn't occurred? And who, or what, was orchestrating this sinister game of cat and mouse? I knew that I had stumbled upon something beyond my understanding, something dark and malevolent lurking within the shadows of my own mind. The following day dawned with a sense of foreboding, each passing moment weighed down by the knowledge of the journal's ominous prediction. I tried to rationalize it away, attributing it to stress or a trick of the mind, but the creeping unease refused to be silenced. Every sound seemed amplified, every shadow elongated, as if the very fabric of reality was unraveling before my eyes. As night descended once more, I found myself drawn back to the attic, the journal burning a hole in my pocket like a lead weight. With trepidation clawing at my insides, I retraced the steps of the previous night, the air thick with a palpable sense of dread. But as I reached the attic threshold, a sudden gust of wind slammed the door shut behind me, sealing my fate within its confines. The darkness seemed to press in on all sides, suffocating me with its embrace. I fumbled for the light switch, but my fingers found only empty air, the darkness swallowing them whole. Panic rose within me like a tidal wave, threatening to consume me whole, but I forced myself to stay calm, to think logically amidst the chaos. As my eyes adjusted to the dim light, I noticed something different about the attic, something that sent a chill racing down my spine. The objects that had once littered the space were gone, replaced by an eerie emptiness that seemed to stretch into infinity. And in the center of it all stood a mirror, its surface shimmering with an otherworldly glow. With a sense of trepidation, I approached the mirror, my reflection wavering in its distorted surface. But as I gazed into its depths, I realized with a growing sense of horror that the figure staring back at me was not my own. Its eyes gleamed with a malevolent light, its lips twisted into a mocking smile that stretched through the whole room. I stumbled backwards in terror, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. This was no ordinary mirror, no mere trick of the light. It was a gateway, a portal to a realm beyond comprehension, and I had unwittingly stumbled into its grasp. With a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach, I knew that I was trapped, caught in a nightmare from which there was no escape. Time seemed to stretch and warp within the confines of the attic, each moment dragging on for an eternity as I grappled with the horror of my predicament. The mirror beckoned to me like a siren's call, its surface rippling with evil. I knew that I had to find a way out, to break free from its sinister grasp before it was too late. I reached out towards the mirror, my fingers brushing against its cool surface. The world seemed to blur and shift around me, reality bending and twisting like a funhouse. And then, with a sudden jolt, I was sucked into its depths, hurtling through the void towards an unknown destination. When I emerged on the other side, I found myself in a place that bore no resemblance to the world I had left behind. The air was thick with an otherworldly chill, the landscape bathed in an eerie half-light that cast long, twisted shadows across the barren landscape. It was a place of nightmares, a realm where the rules of reality no longer applied. As I stumbled through the desolate landscape, I felt a sense of dread gnawing at the edges of my consciousness. I was not alone in this forsaken realm. I could sense it lurking just beyond the veil of shadows, watching and waiting with bated breath. And then, in the distance, I saw it, a towering edifice of darkness, its spires reaching towards the heavens like twisted fingers. With a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach, I knew that I had no choice but to press forward, to confront the source of the darkness that threatened to consume me whole. As I drew closer to the ominous structure, I could hear whispers echoing on the wind, voices from a time long forgotten. With each step, the whispers grew louder, their words twisting and warping in my mind like a dagger to the soul. And then, as I reached the threshold of the ancient fortress, I saw it, the source of the darkness that had plagued me since my arrival in this accursed realm. Standing before me was a figure cloaked in shadow, its form shifting and changing like smoke on the wind. Its eyes gleamed with an otherworldly light, boring into my very soul with a malevolent intensity. And then, it spoke, a single word that echoed through the darkness like a death knell. "Welcome," it whispered, its voice dripping with malice. "Welcome to your new home." The end. Subscribe for more. Thank you.